Hello everyone, very warm welcome to you all. I am Ronang Pawar, student at Srimati Kashibai Naule College of Engineering, Pune. We are elated to bring to you yet another module of HTM Qubits. What is HTM Qubits? It is a quantum of workshops packed together. This is our 15th session of the highly engaging HTM Qubits, and we expect this one to surpass the awesome response we have been getting for the past 14 sessions. This session is to guide you through the entire journey of building serverless apps with AWS Amplify. The need to go serverless has been something everyone wants to do. This session will be your guiding step for the same using AWS Amplify. To guide you through the process of building serverless apps with AWS Amplify, we have with us Harsh Bardhan Mishra. He is a product documentation intern at Red Hat. He is also a developer outreach intern at DeepSource. His in-depth knowledge on building serverless apps with AWS Amplify makes him more than appropriate to guide you through this session. Over to you, Harsh.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, Brunang. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining this session. I will get started with sharing my screen, so I need to stop my camera right now. But let me just share my screen, and I guess it will be visible to you in just a few seconds. I guess yes. Cool. So, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this session on developing and deploying serverless applications with React and AWS Amplify. And in this session, we will be basically discussing a bit about React, Amazon Web Services, and finally, how you as a beginner can get started with developing and deploying applications using Amplify. The primary motive of this session would be to discuss React and AWS from the very scratch. So even if you don't have any experience with either of them, it is totally fine. You can simply rock by following this entire talk. And finally, we will get to see on how you can develop your first application using Amplify and how you can deploy it as well. Finally, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the team at Hackney Mountains for inviting me for this session. And I'm elated to be delivering this talk right now. So let's start off with our interaction. So let me start off with a gentle introduction to myself. My name is Harsh, and I'm an intern at Red Hat, and I'm also currently a Season of Docs intern at Moja Global. I'm also an incoming SD intern at Blockchain Commons, and I have contributed to various open source projects at AWS, Google, Uber, Microsoft, and more. Previously, I was a Major League Hacking Fellow and a software engineer intern at QXF2. So over the past 1 year, I have been working a lot with the cloud services, mainly AWS and Google Cloud. And I have explored over a dozen of services that were specific to the use case that I was trying to solve. This led me to the discovery of Amplify, which is a serverless framework that I can use to develop serverless applications. And Amplify is really flexible with our choice of framework. So if you're developing a web application, you can use React with it. If you're developing a mobile application, you can use Flutter and React Native. And this concept of using Amplify for various types of development needs simply clicked with me. And this is why I started reading and researching about it. And this is why I'm presenting this talk right now. Beside all of these, I'm a third year student at Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology. And I simply love to work with web development, data modeling, DevOps, and a bit of algorithms. So if you would like to get connected with me, you can catch me up on LinkedIn or on GitHub at the rate Harsh Casper. So let's get started. So let's check out the agenda for this session today. In today's session, we will be basically learning the basics of React first. I will not be going into a lot of depth with React because React is simply a huge subject altogether. But I will be just telling on how you can set up a React project and what does serverless actually mean in context of developing your React applications. Second, we will be taking a look at Amplify. So Amplify is the serverless framework on AWS that allows us to develop serverless apps and how it basically ties up with all the AWS services of our choice. And Finally, we will get to see a very small demonstration on how you can build a project using both React and Amplify. If you're having any doubts, just put it on the YouTube live chat, and either me or one of the hosts will be helping you out in the whole process. So with this determination, let's get started up. So first things first, what is React? Well, React is a front-end library that has simply caught the attention of many front-end developers across the entire JavaScript ecosystem. And when it was launched by Facebook, it was called something like an efficient and flexible JavaScript library for building user interfaces. And it got such a huge traction among developers that they can build intuitive user interface with minimal code compared to using vanilla JavaScript or jQuery or some other JavaScript based library or framework. And all of these were utilized before the rise of the niche front-end development frameworks. With React, everything changed. But before we discuss about React in length, we actually need to understand what a front-end library actually is. So as most of you might already know, front-end is just the presentation layer of your application. Most commonly, you can just summarize it as all the stuff that the user needs to see and any sort of the code that is used to efficiently display the data to the user. So if you are building a front-end application, it should be intuitive. The whole user experience should be pleasant. It should be good, and they should not get confused. And after all, it should be managing the efficient storing, presenting, and updating all sort of data from the backend or from the API or whatever you're using. So at the end, a front-end framework or a library simply scaffolds your entire front-end build. It can include some way to structure your file by using some components or CSS preprocessor. It can make use of request, Ajax or Axios or fetch. It can style your components. You can associate the data with the DOM elements and much more. So if you're using a front-end framework or a library, you are definitely simplifying your entire task. And there is much more to this than actually meets the eye. If you're developing applications with simply vanilla JavaScript and simplistic HTML and CSS, that might require extensive use of the DOM elements, basically to get the data and append to the HTML elements. This approach works quite good while you're prototyping, but once the code starts fattening up, it might bring down the performance, and even making some simple changes and bug fixes would require extensive development. So finally, if you're storing your data in the DOM and making sense of the code, it would be too much of an issue. Here comes the use of a front-end framework or a library. Using a framework or a library, you can simply break down your code into components and then make them reusable and maintainable inside your user interface. You can structure the entire data flow in the application. You can style them using some preprocessor or transpilers and much more. At last, it also helps you to follow some sort of a design architecture that would help you while you are scaling up. It brings for speed and maintenance. So at the end, if you're looking for all these features, what you're waiting for, just simply get started with front-end development with the plenty of frameworks around you. It can be React, it can be Angular, it can be Ember, it can be Vue. There is a lot to it. But why specifically React for web development? So according to many of the analysts and many reports, React has been a leading framework due to the usage and the popularity compared to any other front-end frameworks like Angular or Vue. So majority of the developers are using React for building their single-page application. Single-page application, it simply means that no page reloads, no extra wait time. It is just one web page that you can visit, and then you can use it to load different components. If I take into example my own website, it is built in React, and it is using a framework called Gatsby, which basically makes it static and it makes it blazing fast. So as you can see on my website, everything is blazing fast, and you can just use this one particular web page, which will be loading with different components. React allows you to define all of these components as classes or function. Components defined as classes provide more features like some details on the page, And basically they allow you to go forward with scalability, code reusability, and they basically allow you to organize your entire code. So there are a ton of advantages of React that we would possibly cover in the later part of this session. But the first advantage that we need to take a look is how React solves the usage of the DOM. So if you're using traditional HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript, if you want to update the DOM, it will be very slow if there are a lot of data incoming. Angular tries to solve this problem using data binding. Basically, it binds the variable used in the view with their respective counterparts in the model. And if it gets automatically updated, all the instances in a variable in a view gets changed according to the respective value in the model. But React, on the other hand, uses a different approach to solve this problem. It uses a technique called reconciliation so that it can evaluate the differences in the DOM representation. And it basically updates only that part which is being changed. React also makes use of JSX. So this is one sample React app that I have right here. So React is making use of JSX, which is a syntactic sugar between JavaScript and HTML. And basically, React library doesn't understand JSX. It is just used to make the developer's job easier. So this JSX right here is basically transpiled into JavaScript statements by using Babel before the React encounters them. And transpiling, in very layman terms, it is just the process of converting one source language to another. Babel just converts this entire code into converts this entire ES6 code into backward compatible version of JavaScript so that it can be used by some older browsers like Internet Explorer and more. So after all, React is very small, yet it is very powerful. And it provides you multiple other advantages like declarative programming, which basically means that you describe what the program should do, not how to do it. And after all, the way that a developer describes a component view in React is declarative. You can declare how a component should look with every possible set of props. So there are plenty of advantages with React. Reuse of assets is one feature. So if your application has a header, a footer, and all of that, you can just basically reuse all those assets instead of like coding it out in each and every page. And reusing the same component object also makes the whole workflow less stressful and a lot more productive. React.js also provides virtual DOM, which simply means that we can make use of the declarative API of React. And we can also make sure that the DOM always matches the state. React also allows for direct work with components, and it basically makes use of downward data binding so that it can ensure that the changes in the child structure doesn't affect the parents. This makes the whole code usable and stable as well. And lastly, we have got a wide range of React and Redux toolset because React and Redux comes with a very decent set of related developer tools that you can basically use for making your developer life easier. Like you can have React developer tool extension for the Chrome. So let us try to set up a React project first of all. So I have this terminal right here, and basically let me just go back so that I can show it to you. So if you are setting up a React project for the very first time, you need to make sure that you have Node.js and NPM installed on your local machine. If you don't have that, make sure you go to nodejs.org and you can simply install it right here. So this is nodejs.org. I'm on a Linux operating system, so maybe you need to check out your operating system. But if you are on a Windows, make sure you go to the Windows version and you just download the latest stable release. So these latest stable release also have a long-term support. So you don't need to stress too much because sometimes the Node.js versions get outdated, and due to that, you have to update your projects during multiple intervals. So right now the version is 14.17.0. So you can just download that. If you are using sort of a package manager like Brew or Chocolatey, you can make use of that to download Node.js directly without having any sort of a graphical user interface. But once you download it, you will get Node.js and NPM installed on your local machine. So one easy way to check about this is to just run this command, node version. And we can see that 14.16.1 is set up on my machine. So I'm all cool about it. I can also check out the NPM version, which is pretty good. So I don't need to install Node.js and npm right again. But what about installing React? So if you want to build a React project, there are two ways to it. The first way is to obviously get into the Babel toolchain, install multiple packages individually, and then build your custom React app, which is obviously going to get a lot hard. You have to spend like hours and hours to like basically get everything integrated. But the developer team at React basically created a CLI toolchain for us, which is called Create React App. And with this Create React App, we can set up a React project in just a single click. So let's run npm I. We will set a global flag so that we can tell the npm that yes, we want to install it globally. And then we are just going to run create React app. That's all. You have to just press the enter, and the Create React app will be set up on your local machine. Since I've already downloaded Create React app CLI, I don't need to do it again. But if you have not, just run this command and everything would be pre-configured for you. So you can check out if the Create React app has been successfully installed or not by just checking out the version. And as you can see that the Create React app has been installed on my local machine. So Create React app basically allows you to develop your React application and also deploy them in just a quick few seconds. And you don't have to configure a lot of stuff manually. Once you're done with creating your React app CLI, now is the time for you to create your actual app. So I can run Create React app. And then you can specify the name of your application. In my case, let me just run it like my app. And once I do that, the whole CLI will start creating a new React app in my app directory. And it will just take a few seconds, depending upon my network connection. And ultimately, this React app will be set up. Let's just wait for a few seconds. But for the demonstration purpose, I already have a React app right here, which I'm going to use for my thing. So right now, okay. So all of this is pre-configured. I don't need to wait for anything. And now my application has pretty much started. So I can just do a clear. I can go into my app and I can just do a yarn start. So I'm basically using yarn as my package manager right here. And once we push in the command yarn start, that will automatically create the local development server. So if you go to your package.json file, so this is a separate application, but if you just go to your package.json file, you can see that the React packages have been installed right here. And along with that, we have specified some scripts. So the script that I used was start, which basically tells my React app that I need to start my development server. Then we have got the script for build, which will basically create a production build. Test, which will basically run all the tests on my React app. So if you're writing some tests using Jest, it is one good way to test our application. And finally, we have got eject, which is basically used to clean up the whole application. And now, as you can see, our React app has pretty much launched. And we can just go to src /app.js, and we can start editing all the files. And we can just save it, and the whole application will be hot reloaded. So we don't need to run the development server every time. We need to check if our application is working or not. So that's pretty much about setting up a React app. If you just go to app.js, you can actually check the code right here. This is a separate project. So let me just close this up. And let me just go back. And yeah, and let me just specify yarn start. And this was the application that I was building. I have pre-configured some of the packages, but I will let you know what packages are they. And as you can see that we have a logo, we have app.css file, and we can just pretty much like remove this whole portion. And we can just specify a header, and we can say like hello world. And once we save it, let's go back. And we have this hello world pretty much configured here. So now what you can do is that you can start prototyping your user interface. You need to define how many pages you need, what sort of components you need. Like if I just take my example, so I can pretty much say that this is one page, this is another page, and every page has a component right here. So I need to basically break down my entire user interface architecture according to what I'm actually employing. And this is how you can start building out your React app. If you're managing some sort of a state, you can basically make use of the React hooks, or you can make use of Redux. For best practices, you can take a look into how you can architecture your entire front end using some sort of a architecture format like Flow, which is used by Facebook, and all of that. So this is pretty much about setting up a very basic React app. So let us talk about the serverless now. Let me have a look if someone has got any questions up till now. Okay, I don't think that there are any questions, but if there are, please put it on the chat section so that I can basically take a look into if someone is running into any sort of problems or not. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so I don't think that there are any questions as of such because I don't see them on the live chat. So if you have questions, just put it on the chat. Don't wait for me to ask about that. And surely, before I start my next agenda, I will surely cover that up. So let's talk a bit about serverless. So what exactly is serverless? So basically, we need to start with the elephant in the room. Serverless doesn't mean no servers. Serverless simply means that the underlying servers are being hidden from the developer. So if you're, let's say, if I'm talking about the GitHub API, so I just fire up the GitHub API. So if you're using the GitHub API, I can just get the whole information about my particular profile. So my username is Harsh Casper, and I can take a look into my login, my ID, my URL, my followers, my following, my email, and everything. So as you can see that while I'm using this API, the whole underlying infrastructure is completely hidden from me, and I don't have to simply worry about it. So I understand that serverless is a confusing term, but don't let it fool you. You still have to manage some kind of an infrastructure. So in layman terms, serverless architecture or serverless computing simply means that your backend logic will run on some third-party server infrastructure, which you don't have to worry about. So it doesn't mean that there is no server to run your backend logic. Rather, it means that you don't have to maintain it. So let us get started with discussing about the serverless now. So yes, so I guess majority of you understand on how the web works. So every web page is transmitted to your browser as an HTML. Like if I just take the example of Node.js, it is transmitted to my side as an HTML file. And HTML, as you understand, it is basically, okay, sorry. So yeah, so HTML, as you understand, it is basically the language used by the browsers that we can use to describe the content and the structure of a particular web page. And the application that is responsible for sending all this data is called a server. And confusingly, the machine this application resides on is also called a web server. But how does the web application know on what to actually send to the browser? It sends whatever the browser requests. As of now, I have requested for the nodejs.org, and it is sending me that right now. Browsers basically download the website from servers using the hypertext transfer protocol. This protocol is basically what we specify something like as a request and the response model. The client, which is my browser, it is basically requesting the data from a web application that resides on some sort of physical machine. The web application, in turn, responds to the request with the data that my browser has requested. So if I just go here and I check out the network, I can check out all the things that are coming on my side. So as you might have guessed, every page on the internet right now is stored on a remote server. And this remote server can be just understood as a remotely located computer that is optimized to process a request. So to put everything in perspective, you can spin up a server on your laptop that is capable of serving an entire website to the web. And if you just type in that particular domain into your browser, a request will go out to your server and it will render everything that you have got to present. So if you'd like to set up your website for global use, you need to have a server up and running so that it can process a request and render the application on the user side. But let me tell you that this was a traditional approach that we followed Few years back, server computing was the de facto way of serving applications, and we needed dedicated engineers to maintain the servers and the backend code. With the introduction of serverless, that requirement has been completely rooted out. So, from setting up a load balancer to ensuring that your platform can perform good at scale and setting up the build server for your CI/CD pipelines, the infrastructure part of the software development is one big chapter. Serverless is the state where all of the above can be abstracted away and hidden behind the APIs so that you can manage them through. Let me just take an example of a REST API. For a REST API, we need a database, we need a runtime to run our code, and a hypertext transfer protocol proxy. Each of these things have their own caveats, they have their own things that they have to take actions for. Like the database needs indexing and the backups. Our runtime needs a scaling protocol. The proxy needs an authentication mechanism and all of that. By putting them all of them behind an API, like let's say one API for one service, like a service can be something like a login service or a sign up service, we can let them handle their own issues. But the only thing that we are left with is our code. So it's a more simplified communication process that is being done through APIs. And this is how the serverless was born. Serverless doesn't mean that there are no servers. It just means that there are less servers. And it just means that you don't have to manage them because they are abstracted away. They are hidden from you. And from a developer and an operations perspective, there are no servers. This makes scalability easy because you no longer need services for the purpose. Serverless computing allows the business and the companies to pay for the servers only when a user is requesting for it or when an event is being triggered. So due to this, the teams can eliminate the idle time. They can make sure that you don't have to pay extra for the server power. And by going serverless, managers can hire less talent for project maintenance, and it can also focus on promoting the company's services. This is how serverless is changing the world right now. So there are various advantages of serverless architecture. As I mentioned before, serverless architecture is a very powerful way for companies to control the infrastructure expense. So if a website has less than 1,000 visitors, switching to a pay-as-you-go model can simply cut out a huge percentage of the costs that you are incurring. On-server apps have scalability limitation. It simply means that the increasing number of users means the need to rebuild and renovate the tech backbone of the application, which is simply too hectic for you. And this is why the companies use it to prioritize the traffic or the user acquisition part. Serverless architecture also makes the whole development part much easier because you have to just create the elements that are reusable. And almost every serverless function is available on the hypertext transfer protocol request. They are not going to be reliant on source code to run. So you can just have layers upon layers of serverless function that can provide you the reusability as well as by creating some efficient code. So with serverless, a programmer can write code and directly run it on the cloud without worrying about the hardware, operating system, or servers. They can write the business logic as code. They can run the code without needing to be aware of the deployment complexities. Applications get high availability, high scalability without any sort of an additional effort from the developer side. And this can significantly reduce the development time and also the consequent costs. All of this simply makes serverless a very, very lucrative choice for developers to get started with building serverless apps. So we have reached up to this point. So now is a high time to understand on what AWS actually means and what Amplify is actually. So I guess Ayush has a question. So AWS Amplify is free to use. Does the pricing model is same as Firebase? So Ayush, Amplify is not actually free for use because it doesn't come under free tier. But from my experience of building and managing apps on Amplify, it is definitely much, much cheaper than Firebase. So I have been running a full stack application on Amplify that has some 300 users in my college. And the whole cost that I got out of it was less than the cost of a burger. So I guess that is a small price to pay for salvation. But again, if I have to compare Amplify with Firebase, Firebase has a lot better developer experience compared to Amplify. But Amplify simply outweighs Firebase in terms of the services that it provides, along with the flexibility that we have in the development side. So given a choice, always go with Amplify. That's what I would say. So let's get started with understanding on what AWS and what Amplify is. So as I said before, if you have worked with Firebase before, then Amplify can be simply understood as the AWS version of Firebase, albeit with much better features and accessibility than Firebase. Amplify is pretty much an open source framework. So open source in the sense that you get a full CLI, you get a full libraries to integrate your front-end code with the backend, and you have got user interface components as well, so that you can build full stack mobile and web application. So yeah, here it is at AWS Amplify. So it is completely open source. If you would like to contribute to it, you are completely free to do so. And the best part is that it is being actively maintained. So Amplify is one good example of what free versus premium applications do. So basically, it is offered on a freemium basis. You can use it on your for your local development needs, or else if you want to deploy it, you are completely free to do that as well. Albeit you have to pay some amount to AWS for doing that. It also provides you a complete CLI toolchain so that you can actually build your entire application without leaving your terminal. On the other hand, we have also got the Amplify Console, which is present on AWS. And you can basically use this to manage all sort of application through your own AWS account itself. And it also has a Git-based workflow. So basically everything that you do, it will be managed by using some Git providers like GitHub or GitLab and much more. And you can use it to host your full stack serverless apps with continuous deployment. But let us first understand on what AWS actually is. So AWS is basically a cloud version from Amazon, as you all know. And it would be an understatement to state that AWS is literally one of the greatest inventions in the history of mankind, because it has allowed the technical complexities to because it has allowed many companies to solve some technical complexities and problems and allowed them to scale at a pace that no one has ever seen in the history of mankind. So if you see some mega sales from Amazon or from some companies, and if you're able to use some applications in real time, it might be a good time for you to thank the services that is being provided by AWS. And it has simply come to pass because of the massive infrastructure that AWS has because of the services provided by Amazon. So AWS provides multiple service and building blocks that are designed to work with each other. Like if I take the example of S3, it stands for Simple Secure Storage. And it is being used by multiple companies, multiple organizations for storing their static files, like pictures or PDFs or video files and much more. Apart from that, you can make use of EC2, which basically stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. And it is a de facto way that the companies actually use. Okay. Yeah. And it is a de facto way that companies use on AWS for deploying their server applications, not serverless, a server application. You have also got some machine learning services, like you have got recognition, you have got Lex. So all of these basically make AWS a very tightly integrated managed service that you can use to build and deploy your application. So if you need anything, like let's say that I want a MySQL database for myself. So you have got RDS right here. So you can use RDS to basically manage and deploy your MySQL-based databases. If you want sort of a NoSQL database, you have got MongoDB and DynamoDB right here. You need a virtual machine with an Ubuntu setup. You have got EC2 AMIs just for that. This simply makes AWS a secure cloud service platform that can offer you compute power, it can offer you database storage, it can offer you content delivery, and various other functionalities. And to be very, very specific, it is just a large bundle of cloud-based services. So if you have not actually signed up on AWS, just go to aws.amazon.com. The whole sign-up process will literally take you like 10 minutes. And you also need to enter your card details. So it might be sort of like a red flag for you, that because you don't want to enter the card details so that you don't get charged unnecessarily. But trust me, AWS will not be charging you without your prior permission. During the sign up process, you will be charged like 1 or 2 rupees just to authenticate you. But once that authentication part is done, the whole amount will be transacted back to you. So you don't have to worry at all. And you can also manage your entire billing from this billing console so that you don't get charged unnecessarily. I guess my billing would be at a low time, but let's just verify for the case because I don't use my personal account for these purposes. So that's pretty much about AWS. And as I stated before, AWS has got like plenty of services. You have got S3, which is basically serving as the static storage for AWS. You have got DynamoDB, which is something like a NoSQL based data store for AWS. You have got AppSync. AppSync basically allows your application to function in both online and offline modes. You have got Cognito, which is similar to Firebase Auth, basically standing as an authentication module. So you can create login and sign up pages without having to code multiple APIs and all of that stuff. And finally, you have got Lambda, which acts as a compute service for serverless. So Lambda basically allows you to scale up and down depending upon the availability, depending upon the user, so that you don't have to worry about scaling and availability at all. So there are a ton of services right here, but here is a problem for us. We need to build an application that ties up with all these services, but we have developers that know one or two, but they don't know all of them. So how exactly can we build a complete serverless application by knowing each one of them? We need something that can integrate all the services together that will simply make the whole development and the deployment part easier. So what do we actually need? And as you guessed it right, Amplify combines all of these into one single unit. With Amplify, you can configure and integrate the underlying cloud resources like AppSync or Cognito or Pinpoint, which is basically used for analytics, S3 for storage, Lex for conversational bots, directly from your terminal or the command line. And thus, it basically minimizes the time required for you to set up and manage your backend services. That saves time, right? And at the end, we have got the Amplify CLI that helps us to create, integrate, and manage the AWS cloud services for our application. So you can include component libraries to specify the API gateway. You can use it to add authentication. The main features supported by CLI are like data modeling, deployment in multiple environments like on production or on development. And it basically allows you to manage your entire infrastructure as code using CloudFormation, and also allows you to mock your local changes before you actually deploy it up. So this makes Amplify the one ring, which can basically rule all of these services in one single integrated service. And I guess this is one big motivation for all of you to get started with Amplify, because now you don't have to learn a ton of AWS services. You can just use one particular CLI, which can manage everything for your use case. So now that we have understood things up to this point, why don't we actually build an application using React and Amplify? So the next 30 minutes, we will get to work on a very simple app. I'm making sure that we don't get into the complexities of React or GraphQL or AWS, but just a very simple application for you to get started with React and Amplify. And the simple application is building a user authentication using Amplify. So if you have worked in the field of web development or mobile application development without using any Firebase or anything like that, building a user authentication is really tough. You need to create multiple endpoints for like sign up, login, forgetting your password, and then you have to manage your entire service. Like it may be a microservice for you, and you have to manage everything up. And in cases of high traffic, you also need to manage the availability. Many of the services, like let me take the example of Zerodha or the Covin application, it simply goes down when multiple users start signing up on the application. In this example, we will just get to see on how we can build our own user authentication using Amplify within 10 lines of code. It is literally lesser than 10 lines of code that will take us to have our application up and running. But how are we actually going to do that? So as I stated before, Amplify is basically using Cognito here. And Cognito is the AWS service that we use for authentication. So we are going to use Cognito for implementing a very robust and pretty much error-free authentication module for our application. Then we are going to use some React templates directly from AWS so that we don't have to code our React application, basically all that JSX and CSS mess. And we can have our custom login sign up page with an OTP authentication. And finally, we are going to deploy this entire application using CloudFront Global Edge, which serves as a content delivery network, basically a CDN for your entire React app directly from your Amplify console. So this is what we are going to do today. So let's get started up. So first we have got this app.js file. For people who are not yet familiar with the React syntax, let me just explore the whole directory structure right here. So at first we have got this package.json file where we have kept all the dependencies and all the development and the scripts right here. So as you can see, I have already set up React, React DOM, and the React scripts. For the use case, I have also set up Amplify because it literally takes a ton of time to basically install it on my local machine. So I have just done it for my use case, but I will tell you on how you can actually download it on your local machine as well. So the very first thing that we need to do is to basically, let me just get started with a new tab. The logo is defined but not used. Okay, let me just fix that up quickly. We don't need the logo part. Cool. So first of all, let's go. Let me just maximize it. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to install the Amplify CLI. So just like I mentioned before, Amplify features a CLI, basically an entire command line interface for you, so that you can just make use of it to manage and configure the AWS resources as per the demand. So if you want to install the Amplify CLI, it is very easy. Just specify Amplify install -g, which basically stands that we are installing it globally. And then we are going to specify AWS Amplify and CLI. So this entire command will install the whole CLI command on your local, basically the whole CLI toolchain on your local machine, and you don't have to worry about anything at all. Since I have already installed the CLI, I don't need to do that again. So I will just close this up. I will just check if it is correctly configured or not. Okay. This ideally should not happen, but let us check out Amplify. So yes, we have the CLI installed here and you can see the version. So that means that we have correctly installed it. So once you install the CLI, you need an AWS account right from here. But if you have not, that might be a problematic for you because you have to configure your Amplify on your local machine. So do make sure that before running this command, you have your AWS configured. Even if you have not, you can just follow up the steps and you can see like how I create the application. So once you install the CLI toolchain, let us go ahead and configure our Amplify. As soon as you enter Amplify configure, it will automatically create a new tab for us. And in this new tab, we have to basically log in into our AWS management console. And then we have to specify the user that we're going to use. So I'm just going to press enter. And now I need to specify the region. It can be US East, it can be US East 2. And this is basically all of those places where the data centers are located. So I will just go with US East 1. Specify a username. So I can, let's say like Harsh Casper, HTM. And once we do that, we have to create an identity access and management role. For people who are not yet familiar with it, it is basically a service that allows us to create multiple users for our cloud resources. Obviously, I don't want to use my root user for every service that I'm using, maybe because of security concerns, or maybe because I might allocate it multiple other resources. And I don't want to jump on the bandwagon of giving out multiple resources to it altogether. So what we will be doing here is that we will create a username. So username is Harsh Casper -HTM, and we have to specify the access type. It can be a programmatic access through an access key ID and a secret access key, or it can be through the management console access. So let me just go with the programmatic access key as of now. Once we do that, we need to specify on what sort of policy do we want to give. So as you can see that I have given it the administrator access. It means that every service that I can access from a root account, I can basically, my IAM user can basically use all of these services all together. And I'm just going for this right now, but definitely if you're going into a production purpose, don't necessarily use an administrator access. Try to add the user to a group, and then you start assigning all these services individually. That will make sure that every security concern is addressed. Next, you can add the tags. So tags in the sense that you add some keys and you can add some values. So the key here can be HTM, and it can be like a demo session. And then we have to review up. So once we review up and we create the user, we will get an access key ID and a secret access key. So this is my access key ID and this is my secret access key. And you can just go back to the terminal and they will be asking for your access key ID and then for your secret access key. And you have to just basically enter them up, and your whole Amplify CLI toolchain will be configured with your AWS account. Obviously, since this is a public session going on, I will not be exposing my access key ID and the secret access key, but I hope you're already clear with what step you need to go up to before you access all your configurations. So let me just close out it. And I know that my Amplify has already been configured and I already have a user. So I will just go ahead and I will go with installing my React templates. So since I already have a React project, the best thing that we can do is that we can use the Amplify toolchain and the NPM so that we can actually install our React templates. So Amplify comes with a lot of UI templates that we can simply import in our application and we can make use of them. So this simply makes it easier for us to not code out anything and simply rely upon the UI templates that Amplify is providing for us. If I just go back to my package.json file, I already have this specified right here. So my React templates has already been added. So I don't need to add it back again. So let us go back. Let us do the actual thing that we need to do. Once we install our CLI toolchain, once we configure it up, and once we install the React templates, let us initialize the Amplify app in our project. And we will run a very simple command, which is amplify init. As soon as this command will run, it will automatically ask me the name of the project, which in case is Hack the Mountains. Okay, I'm good with it. And it will extract all the information intelligently from my machine, from my local machine. And it will tell me that these are all the project information. So I can get to see that this is a name. This is the environment, which is basically in development mode. We have this default editor, which is Visual Studio Code, JavaScript, React. Our source directory is src, which we can see right here. And this is our distribution directory path, which is build, our build command, and our start command. So I'm pretty fine with all of them. So let me just pass a yes. So it will use a default provider, which is my AWS Cloud Formation. I'm going to use AWS profile right here. So let me just click on AWS profile. And as you can see that I have already created a new profile, which is Harsh Casper -hack-1. So let me just click on that. And yes, our entire backend environment developer mode has been pretty much activated. The project has been initialized in the cloud, and it will just take a couple of seconds to basically have this whole application up and running. So let's wait for a few seconds. Up till then, if anyone has got some questions, I'm completely open to that right now. So this project is being initialized. This project is being initialized. And if we just go back, let me just go back here. Oh my God, I have been billed. Okay, no worries. So yeah. So let me just go to Amplify. And as you can see that I have an application up and ready here, which is Hack the Mountains. So if I just go back to my terminal, our entire Amplify project has been configured, and we are ready to get started with adding the Amplify services to our application. So let's go and do some of them. Let's go and do some of the awesome stuff. So now that we have reached up to this point, why don't we just go ahead and start creating our authentication module? So Amplify actually provides us a lot of stuff. So if I just go to okay, just back. Yeah. So as you can see that we have our overview here, we can see that the deployment has been completed. So now we can add authentication to this app. We can add an API, which will be a GraphQL API. We can have a file storage, we can have analytics, and we can have functions. Let us go ahead and start with our authentication part. For this, we have to just run this one command, and automatically an authentication model will be created for us. Let us check how to do that. So let us run this command amplify add auth. And once we run this command, it will automatically run the current configured provider, which is Amazon Cognito. For people who don't know what Cognito is, then it basically provides us authentication and authorization services. Let us go with the default configuration as of now, because I
I think there's some issue in her connectivity. Give us some time and we will be back. Till the time Harsh comes back, you can post the questions in the comment box if you have any questions regarding the session he's conducting.
Can you please let me know till what point I covered so that I can just share my screen again? Bruna, can you please tell me like till what point did I actually cover so that I can just start
Yeah,
from right there?
yeah, just a hi, Harsh. I think there is the network issue again at Harsh's place.
I guess I'm back.
Yeah, Harsh. So we were at how do you want users to sign up? At that point,
Uh,
you lost the connection.
okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, so I guess I missed out showing the code demonstration part.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess when I got disconnected, I was still coding it out. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
So,
no issues.
so yeah. So basically,
Sorry for the inconvenience. Uh,
I guess I got disconnected again. Mronang, am I audible?
yeah, you are audible, Harsh.
Okay, so let me share my screen again. Can anyone? Yeah, cool. So yes, let's go back to our app.js file. Sorry for this minute disturbance. But as we can see that we have already defined an arrow function, the amplify signout component, and we have configured our index.js file to import the configuration file. And if we just go back to our local development server, our authentication module is already up and running. So our Amplify is already specifying the resources on the cloud. So let's just wait for a few seconds before that part is completed. But once we do that, we can just go back to our React app. We can create an account. We can specify a username, a password, an email address, a phone number, and our application is up and ready to be like signed up and basically made use of. So let's make sure that this is getting completed, because only after then I can make use of it. So this is pretty much what Amplify is providing for us as of now. You can also add an API, and let's expect that my whole internet connection persists. Till that time, I can basically show you all this stuff. So let's wait for the API resources to get updated. And let us specify a username for our purpose. So Harsh Casper, small username, our phone number, and let us, okay, first we need to actually push it. Okay, let's just wait for this. But if you just go and like take a look at the Amplify, you can do a lot of other stuff as well. Like you can just basically add APIs to it. You can add file storage to it the same. You can add analytics, you can add functions. So a whole lot of stuff. So yes, let us hope it gets completed on time. But till the time it gets completed, let me show you all the other stuff that Amplify provides us. So if I just zoom it, why don't we simply add an API to the same? So basically GraphQL makes use of a GraphQL API that we can make use of. So for people who are familiar with APIs, you already know that it stands for Application Programming Interface. And it basically is a way for your backend to communicate with your front-end application. So Amplify provides us with both REST APIs and GraphQL APIs. So we can simply add a REST API to this. I guess my application is configured up. So let us go ahead and like try to create an account. Okay, let me just run it again. Let's create an account again. Okay, so if I just go back to my mail ID, I might get an OTP for this. Okay, let's wait. And yes, we have got the OTP. Let's put out the confirmation code, confirm it. And yes, our application is running on the whole. So since we have not specified any other component as of yet in our app.js file, we actually don't need, we will not see anything right here. But you can simply put up other components if you're already familiar with React, and you can start building up your entire application. So since we have done that, let us go ahead and try to create an API as well. I will not be delving much deep into creating a whole GraphQL setup. I will just tell you like how to set up your basic APIs for your entire purpose. So let us first try to add an API to it. So Amplify provides us a very handy command, which is amplify add API. And once we do that, it will automatically ask us if we want to go with GraphQL and REST. If you are building serverless apps, it is always obvious for you to go with GraphQL part. We have to provide the API name. Then we have to specify the authorization type. It can be the API key. It can be the Cognito user pool. We have been using the Cognito user pool, so let's just go with that. I don't want to make any additional settings. And I don't have any sort of an annotated schema. So yeah. Now we have to choose a schema template right here. So for people who have actually studied database and management system, they might understand about single object relationships or one-to-many relationship or objects with fine-grained access control. So basically, I will just show you the schema for a very basic to-do application. So let's just go with single object. But if you want to create a full-fledged application that delves on a social network, maybe you can go with one-to-many, or maybe you can go with this third option of creating a whole project management app. So let's go with this. Yes. And let's take a look at the schema. We are using the Visual Studio Code. And as soon as we do that, we can exactly take a look at the schema that we have right here. So this is a very basic schema on this particular page. And as you can see, like this GraphQL, this Amplify CLI makes use of a GraphQL transformer that can basically convert your entire GraphQL schema file into the appropriate CloudFormation template based upon the data that you have pushed into it. So the model is basically storing the types in the DynamoDB. If you can also put an auth module so that it can define the authorization strategies. And you can also add multiple other options like connection for like specifying the relationship between the model types. Searchable if you want to stream the data through the Amazon's Elasticsearch service. So it is pretty much a great thing right here. Once you do that, you can just do the next thing, which is basically to push the entire thing to our Amplify backend right again. So it will again pick up all our local backend resources and it will provision the resources on the cloud itself. So yes, we want to continue. We'll upload all the files. And we also want to generate the code for our GraphQL API. Let's go with JavaScript. Yes, yes, yes. And it will automatically update the resources on the cloud. So if I just jump back on my Amplify management console, I can exactly see that after a few seconds that my API has also been enabled. But what if we want to manage these entire things from an admin user interface? That will simply make the things look much more flexible. So we can go to the admin UI management and we can simply enable the admin UI. So that will create an admin user interface and you can just specify all of these things on the fly. So let me just duplicate it and I can show you the various things that we have configured. So if we just go to our Cognito user pool, we can take a look at the Cognito that is up and running right now. So this is Cognito. So we can just go to our user pools. And till then, like our admin UI has been enabled. So let us just invite some users. So for now, I will be inviting myself to use this management console. Let us send an invite. And I guess I will get a mail in just a few seconds. Yeah, here it is. And this is our password, which is pretty much a temporary one. And I can just log into my management console using the same. Let me just sign in and then I have to create a new password for the same. And here we are. So as you can see, like these are all my user pools. And if I just try to find it, then maybe I can find, okay, React Amplify. Yeah. So this is the user pool that I created for this demonstration purpose. In a similar manner, if you check out the other services, Amplify has created the appropriate services on all of these parts. So you don't exactly have to worry about managing them all together. Amplify is simply tying them in one single tool chain. So yes, now our admin UI has been enabled. Let us select an environment, which is the dev. And it will load my entire UI. And we can check out everything right from this place. So as you can see that our data model has been deployed. We have configured the login and the sign up. Now we just need to manage the groups. We need to edit the application content and all of that part. So like if you just want to take a look at the data model, so let me just go to content, user management, okay, authentication, functions, okay. So this is our GraphQL API. If you just click on the resource name, we can exactly take a look at our GraphQL API right here. And now we can define the schema. Like you can just edit the schema right here. If you're already familiar with GraphQL, if you're not, maybe you need to learn a bit about it. If you want to run a query, then we have to basically log in with the user pool. So this is my client ID and my username and the password, because we actually specified that all of these APIs would be used through the Cognito user pool. So we have to actually sign up to the same. So just log into it. Never save it. And now you can run separate queries for that. But since we don't have anything specified in our to-do list because we have not actually coded it out, it might not work in a very appropriate manner. But this is just for the demonstration part. Once we have done all of this, now is the time for you to deploy this application. So let us go ahead and like create a very simple repo. So let me just go here, create a new repository. And I will just push all of this entire code in on this one particular repo. So let me just keep it like HTM Amplify. Let me just keep it private because I'm going to delete it anyway, and create a repo. So once we do that, let me just go here and let me just add the origin and push this entire thing to my remote repository. So let us check if our remote has been properly configured. So yes, it has been properly configured. Let us put git add, git commit. It can be like add an auth module. And let us do a git push origin master. And as you can see, it has been pushed to our GitHub repo. So everything has been configured, and possibly now is the time for you to deploy your front end as well. So let us go back to our Amplify app. So Hack the Mountains. Let us go to the front end environments and let us go to GitHub. So since we are using GitHub as our Git service provider, and let's select a repo here. Okay, just give it a second. I guess it would load. Yeah. So the GitHub authorization was successful. We have to select a repo, which is HTM Amplify. We have to select the branch, which is pretty much master branch. And then let's click on next. So as soon as we click on next, we have to specify the backend environment. So our backend environment is dev, and our backend role is pretty much created here. And this is the entire settings that we will be using. So we will be using yarn install for installing all the packages, and we will be using the build for basically building our entire site. Let's click on next, save, and deploy. So that's all it would take for you to deploy your entire full stack application on Amplify by using the Amplify backend services like GraphQL and Cognito and AppSync. And your front end can be on React, it can be on React Native or Flutter, whatever your development preferences are. So as you can see that Amplify already offers you a complete CI toolchain. It will basically provision you the resources for us. Then it will basically build the entire project. It will deploy it. And finally, we will have an option to basically verify if this build has been successful or not. So if we just go to build, we can check the build process that is going on. And depending upon if we are facing any sort of blockers, we can just configure that up pretty easily. So that's all from how you can develop and deploy your applications on Amplify. And I guess this build would be complete in a few seconds or minutes, depending on how much it is going ahead. But I'm completely open to questions right now. So if you have any questions on your mind, you can completely shoot it out in the chat section. I'm definitely taking a look at the conversation between Abir and Suyash. So you can ask any questions if you have right now, and I will be answering all of them up. So you can basically reach out to me on LinkedIn or GitHub at the rate Harsh Casper, or if you're on Twitter, just Harsh underscore Casper. And if you have some interesting project ideas using Amplify, I'm definitely interested to learn more about them, and possibly we can build them together in a mutual learning process.
So I think it was a very great session. Thank you, Harsh, for this amazing information you provided to everyone. Let's see if any questions come up in the comment section.
Sure. So Suyash, basically, if we can just jump to the Amplify documentation itself. So So basically, Amplify provides you a free tier as well, and it is basically for static web hosting. So if you are like build minutes like per month would be like 1,000, and you can host up to 5 GB of data through that. But if you're going for pay as you go model, you have to pay $0.01 for per build minute, and you have to also pay some amount. It would be like nearly a few cents for every GB that you're storing it right here. So this is the free tier that you can basically use for your purpose in the entire thing. If you are creating an application that can be something like, let's say, a social media application, then maybe the static web hosting would be more than enough for you to manage only a few hundred users. But if you're going beyond that, obviously you need to go for the pay as you go. Pay as you go simply means that you will not be charged upon how many minutes you're using. Basically, you will be charged on how many resources are being consumed. So that makes it really flexible, and you can simply shut down the resources if your pay scale is going higher and higher. So that makes AWS really flexible when it comes to the billing part. AWS also provides you pricing examples. So like this is the example one that you can simply follow up. And this is the example two. So you can basically make use of it to estimate your entire cost for your development needs and the purposes. So I hope this pricing part is clear. And I really see that you want to create some major projects. So you're basically relying upon free services. So for that purpose, Amplify is more than enough for you to basically show up a demonstration, because it will just charge you a few cents, maybe not anything at all. And you can just make use of that for your entire purpose. Otherwise, you can always rely upon free resources like Heroku or Netlify or Vercel for basically front-end builds. And for backend, you need to rely upon services like Heroku, which is pretty much flexible enough for the entire purpose. So Abir,
So
basically this
Abir
has
has
been stated out with the example. So a web application has 10,000 daily active users and is updated 2 times per month. So Amazon has put out a billing of like nearly $60+. So maybe this would clear the things up for you. So for a startup, like if you're taking a look at it from a startup perspective, this is quite very reasonable. And AWS also has got AWS for startups, which is basically something like an incubation service where you will be given out some amount to basically make use of these AWS services. This is a reason why a lot of businesses, startups, and private ventures are making use of AWS in real time. And I know that Abir has got a very awesome product and he's creating a startup on top of it. So I'm really hopeful he can make use of the same. Yeah. So here is the thing that I was talking about. And the best part about this thing is like, if you are using AWS for building and scaling right now, you can simply export it to some other cloud service provider in a future point of time with no questions asked from AWS. So if I just go back to Amplify, okay, my application has been deployed. It is present on this particular domain, and I can access it right now using the same username and the password that I originally specified. So our front-end build is successful. Let us enter our password, sign in, and yes, our application is up and ready right here. So that's pretty much about the demonstration part. If there are any more questions, I'm completely open to that. Otherwise, we can call it a day. It was an awesome session with some hiccups, but we definitely recovered on that.
Yeah, so it was really a wonderful session. Thanks, Harsh.
Yeah.
Looking forward for more
Thank you for
sessions
inviting
from
me.
you. Yeah.
Sure. Maybe next edition. Cool. So have a good day, guys.
Yeah, same to you.